It's lovely to see you all, and welcome indeed, and thank you very much for taking the time out to be part of our annual general meeting. Let me just start with a few housekeeping messages. Normally the housekeeping events are about fire alarms and where the toilets are, but we can skip that, I think, in these circumstances. But what we do need to do is just remind people that if you can turn your microphones off, and I think we're able to do that centrally, actually, that does prevent feedback and clatter. We will be recording this meeting just really so we can get an accurate record, and we've got and the minutes can be an accurate reflection of the outcome of the meeting. You'll be encouraged to ask questions and contribute at various points during the meeting. If you want to ask a question, there are a number of ways you can do this. You can, there should be a hand function that you can press on, and that puts a hand up against your name, and we can then know that you want to ask a question. You can use a chat facility, and most of the machines will have a chat facility where you can type in a question. So if you want to make use of that, that's encouraged. And failing all that, just wave and jump about and draw attention to yourself, and we'll try and identify people, because, as I say, we do want to encourage questions throughout the proceedings. So with that, I think that there'll be a number of occasions where we have to have a vote for a formal part of the business, and in those situations I'll be asking for somebody to propose and second motions, and again, hopefully people can do that by raising their hand to indicate their willingness to do it. And the final thing is that if you do have any technology problems, we have someone on hand, and you can always ring them if you need to on 0131 557 7437. So, but hopefully that won't be necessary. Hopefully you can just relax and enjoy the entertainment of the afternoon. It will get better when it comes to the tenant involvement after the AGM. Sadly, the AGMs have to follow a statutory format, and they can be quite dull and tedious, but they are absolutely essential to the good running of the organisation. But hopefully we can get through the AGM business quickly and then move on to the more enjoyable part of the afternoon. So can I finish the housekeeping by moving on now to our item 2 on the agenda? And well, first let me introduce the key people for the afternoon who are going to be doing most of the speaking, and that's myself. I'm Mike Martin, and currently chair of Hanover, and there'll be Donna Henderson, whose face is on my screen at the moment. So Donna, who I'll be passing on to in a moment, who's our director of finance. Gary Devlin, who's the chair of audit committee, who's on our board of management, and sitting with me here at our headquarter office is Angela Curry, who's our chief executive. So there we are, the 4 kind of principal participants in this afternoon's affairs. So with that, can I hand over to Donna, who I think just going to confirm who the apologies we've received come from.
Yep. Thanks for that, Mike. And as interim company secretary, I would like to confirm the members who have given their apologies today are Margaret Warowski, Ashley Campbell, Fraser Mitchell, and Joe Roger. I would also like to confirm that following the count of our proxy votes, which are 35, and the membership attending virtually in the meeting, we are now quorate with the AGM and in accordance with their rules.
Thanks, Donna. So we are a legally and bona fide gathering. That's good to know. So if we move on to item 3, which is the approval of our minutes from the annual general meeting held on the 24th of September last year. And also we held a special general meeting on the 15th of July this year. So there are 2 sets of minutes. So if we can, first of all, approve the minutes of the annual general meeting last year. There are no matters arising from these minutes that need to be raised today. Minutes were sent out with the information packs for this meeting. So I'm hoping that we can approve these minutes as a true record. There is someone who's raised a hand, and it's just one of the 44. So if whoever's raised your hand, can you turn your microphone off and join the conversation?
It's Ruth Steele, Mike.
Sorry?
It's Ruth Steele.
Oh, hello,
Ruth Steele
Ruth.
has raised her hand.
Ruth. Okay. So,
Ruth,
what would
yeah.
you like to say?
I'll approve the minutes.
Thank you very much. So there's an approval there. So I think we'll take that as a proposal and approve the minutes of the AGM for last year. Thank you very much, Ruth. And if we can do the same for the minutes. Okay. If we can also approve the minutes of the special general meeting we had on the 15th of July. And this was a meeting that we had to have in order to get the approval to hold the AGM in this virtual way. Our rules previously didn't allow that, so we had to amend our rules to give ourselves permission to hold meetings in this virtual way. So if those minutes can be approved, please, I would be grateful. Thank you very much. I'll take silence as affirmation. So if we then move on to item 4, which is my report on the activities of the last year. And I think it's fair to say it's been quite a year. COVID's touched us all in some way. And I suppose at the best, it's massively disrupted our life. And for some, it's been devastating and traumatic. And while Hanover's been fortunate in avoiding the large number of deaths that affected care homes throughout the country, we have nonetheless lost 43 residents to COVID over the last year or so. And I think that we would all on the board and from the senior management team want to express our deepest sympathies to the families and loved ones of those people. And there's also been a large number of residents and staff who have been afflicted by COVID during the year. Some people haven't been terribly ill, but others have been very ill and have had to go into hospital. And we really wish all of those people well and hope that they are fully recovered and are able to live their lives in a good and normal way. But it has been a really challenging year for us all. I think the introduction of the vaccines last autumn and through the winter period has been fantastic and has obviously had a huge impact on the way we've been able to face up to this pandemic now and into the future. So I think it's absolutely worth recording the difference that is making to us all, and particularly for those of us who have an older lifestyle. Our staff have been amazing during this period. They've had to adapt to new ways of working very quickly, and they've done so with alacrity. They've been creative and flexible and looking for ways of sustaining our contacts and our support to residents. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. The personal care that we provide in our very sheltered developments has continued throughout this whole period. And those staff, I think, need particular acknowledgement. We've used telephones and technology to underpin our ways of keeping in touch with people. And that's been really good and creative. And one of the specific schemes that came out of this was our buddying scheme, where members of staff would phone residents on a regular basis, particularly those who are living alone and where we were concerned about loneliness. And at the height of the lockdown last year, we were phoning over 400 residents every week through this process. And it's worth saying that this was also good for our staff, because a number of staff doing this work were admin staff who didn't normally have contact with our residents. So they valued it and as well as our residents. So it's been a really good scheme. Things have settled down now, and we're still contacting about 100 people or so each week. And this is an initiative that we will want to continue with beyond the pandemic situation. But it's fair to say that we are all looking forward to being able to welcoming families and relatives and friends back into our developments in a much more open and relaxed way. And I think that day can't come soon enough. What we have been doing during the last year is rolling out IT to a lot of our developments and putting in flat screens and enabling residents in different developments to connect up with each other. And I think that's another great initiative. So there's been virtual coffee mornings taking place between developments in different parts of Scotland where people otherwise wouldn't have been able to meet. And so these, again, are initiatives that have come from the pandemic that we'll want to continue with as we move forward. And also we'll want to offer support to individual residents in being more confident in the use of IT so that they can stay in touch with each other and with their own families and friends. So where there's a demand, we will try and support residents in the use of their own laptops or smartphones or whatever, just to use technology for their own personal benefits. So notwithstanding COVID, we've had a year of substantial change within the governance at Hanover. And last autumn, we went out and sought to recruit new members to our board. And we were pleasantly surprised by the number of people who applied and the calibre of people that applied, particularly given that being a board member is non-remunerative. We don't pay people anything. It's a completely voluntary activity. So we're deeply indebted to those members of our board who give up their time and their expertise to help, well, not to help, but to actually oversee the running of Hanover. So last autumn, we were able to appoint Ashley, Adele, Rob and Alan to our board. And there's a little profile of those members in your packs today. And we had to, by our rules, we had to co-opt them to the board last November. And it's fair to say that they have, during this last 6 months, all settled in really well and have added a lot to the competence and ability of the board. They bring with them skills and experiences that are really added to our overall effectiveness. And I think we are now, it's fair to say that we are greater than the sum of our parts with our current board membership. It's a good, robust board. And I'm hoping by the end of this AGM, they will have moved their status from being co-optees to full members of the board. So welcome to those new members. There's also been some key staffing changes during the year. First of all, our Director of Asset Management, Mark Farley, retired during the year. And I'd like to note our appreciation for the excellent work that he undertook to strengthen the development capacity of his department and the improvements to the planned maintenance programs. He certainly left his department in a stronger and better position than when he found it on his arrival 6 years previously. So we wish Mark well in his retirement. We also saw the retirement of our Chief Executive Officer, Helen Murdoch, and Helen had been with Hanover for well over 20 years and the last 13 years as Chief Executive. And when she took over as Chief Executive, I think it's fair to say Hanover was a very cautious, very traditional association. It was solid, reliable, stable, but it didn't set the world on fire. And I think under Helen's leadership, she was more ambitious for Hanover and wanting to be more innovative as an organisation. And she did lead a change in the direction of Hanover, and the results of that are some absolutely splendid developments that we now have that have come online over the last few years. And she's done that while preserving the financial stability of the organisation, so it wasn't done with any jeopardy. So our vision for a home for life and a desire to provide care alongside our housing management services is very much down to Helen's drive and during her tenure. So we'd like to offer Helen a massive thanks for her contribution and wish her very well for the next phase of her life. So we've had 2 big vacancies that we've had to fill during the year. And of course, we had to do it all virtually. There was no opportunity to meet people and look them in the eye, so to speak. It was all done through use of technology. But we've been extremely successful in being able to appoint 2 really able and capable people to these key posts. So Jo Voicey has joined us as Director of Asset Management and brings with her plenty of relevant experience, along with her drive, energy and positive attitudes. And she's already taking her new department forward in very positive ways. And alongside Jo, we were also appointed Angela as the new Chief Executive Officer. And again, Angela brings with her loads of good experience from the housing association sector. And she also has excellent leadership qualities. She shares Hanover's vision of providing homes for life in a very caring and considerate way. which means that we've got the continuity that's important for an organisation like this. But she's also brought with her some fresh thinking and new challenge born from being outside the organisation. And that just reinforces our desire to ensure that Hanover becomes the best housing association in Scotland engaged in the provision of housing and care. So we've now got a great blend of new, fresh thinking and fresh challenge from the external appointments, alongside the organisational knowledge, which is really critical from those directors who have been with us for some time, Donna and Chris and Adam. And so that's a really great mix, and I'm very confident that we've got a senior management team that's going to serve Hanover well into the future. And it's worth just reflecting also that in 42 years, Angela is only the third chief executive that Hanover has ever had, and she is the first external appointment. So it's quite an ambitious period for Hanover, and there's a lot of risks associated with such changes. But I'm really pleased to say that those risks have been minuscule in this instance, and it's all worked out really well for us. So we're in a great position as we go and move forward. So while this has been a year of transition, we've also had to sustain our services, and often in new ways. And I've mentioned some of the ways that we've used technology to enable us to stay in touch with residents and be creative about that. And 18 months ago, none of us had heard of Zoom, but now it's a part of our everyday currency. And there's, I know, Zoom coffee mornings going on all over the place across Hanover, which is terrific. We've revamped our newsletters so that they're more online, and they support team quizzes between developments. We've run art competitions, and we've looked for all sorts of ways of engaging people in activities that will avoid people being lonely and feeling isolated. So that's great. But I think there's also been real challenges for us, which we're going to carry forward. There's been a backlog in the repairs. There's a long period when we weren't able to get access to people's flats and houses, so we're having to work through a big backlog of repairs. So in the short term, we've saved money by not spending on repairs, but in the longer term, that money will all have to be spent alongside the current repairs that we're doing. So that creates challenges for us. There's been delays in completing our new developments. So we should have had some new developments coming online last year, but COVID has meant that the building work on those has been slower. So they'll be coming online during this year. So next AGM, there'll be some very good news to report about the number of new developments that come on stream. Perhaps the most pressing concern for us, though, is the high number of vacancies that we've had, because there's obviously been a reluctance for people to move into new developments and new flats as they become vacant over the last year or so. And that means that we're not generating the income from rents and service charges that as an organisation we absolutely need to enable us to invest in the improvements and repairs to our properties. So that's a real challenge for us. And our telecare service has also been a challenge. So the high staff turnover in that service has meant that we've struggled to ensure that the service quality remains high. And so we're actively working on ways of mitigating that. So to say it's not been an easy year is an absolute understatement, and we carry a lot of challenges forward as we move from managing COVID as a crisis situation to managing the consequences of COVID in a more ongoing position. But as I've said before, I think we've got the financial stability and we've got the talent and expertise and skills in the organisation to do that very successfully. So I feel very confident about the future. So finally, from me as chair, I've thoroughly enjoyed and found it hugely satisfying being chair of this organisation. But this is going to be my last year in the chair, and from today I'm going to be retiring from this position. I think we all have our sell-by date, and I'm keen to go before I reach my sell-by date rather than exceeding it, because we all know what happens to milk after it goes past its sell-by date. So I'm comfortable that I leave the organisation in a good place. I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I felt really proud to be part of Hanover over the last number of years. And I would just want to say a particular personal thanks to Helen and her PA Nancy, and now to Angela and her PA Emma for the personal support and help and assistance they've given me as chair. I couldn't have done the work without their continuous support and tolerance. So a big thank you to them. And I just wish everybody well for the future, and hope, and I'm absolutely confident that Hanover will go from strength to strength. So thank you for that. That's more than enough for me. But if anybody wants to ask any questions, you're more than welcome to do so. And I'll try and deflect them as best I can. But Mary Mollison, I think you're putting your hand up. Mary, you'll need to switch your microphone back on.
That's switched on again. Throughout your speech just now, you're talking, we keep getting the impression that Hanover pays more attention to rented accommodation than it's...
I can't hear you, Mary.
Have you got any volume on your computer? Can you put the volume up a bit? I can barely hear.
Yeah, it's on full. Is that better? Hold on a second.
Ollie's getting a microphone. No. Try again, Ollie. No, you can't. There's nothing at all now. We've lost you completely.
Okay.
Could you use the chat box? Is there? Do you have the chat facility on your computer? You can maybe type your question.
Excuse me, Mary, if you unplug where you were putting the headphones in, you're very faint, but we can still hear you a bit, whereas with those headphones in, we can't hear anything at all. Still can't.
Yeah. I wonder if there's any other questions while Mary types of
questions.
Yeah,
Does anybody else have any questions while Molly's trying to work out a computer? I promise this is not sabotage. I'm not. I can hear somebody's television in the background. Okay. No, I'm sorry. This is how frustrating this is. How do you find the chat facility on?
There's a wee speech bubble at maybe at the top or the bottom of your screen, Mary. A wee speech bubble, and if you click on that, it allows you to type something in the chat. Right, she's got that. She's got that. Right.
Okay, so while we'll wait for Molly's Mary Mollison, Mary's question to come through. If there are any other questions people have, I can't see any hands up. So
there's another.
There's another question from Liz Mackay.
Oh, okay, Liz, fire away.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, just speak up.
If you can speak up a little bit, that would help.
Right. You mentioned earlier about understandably everything being in arrears as far as repairs, etc. were concerned. What I wanted to know was major works that should have been going on within certain places. What is going to happen to catch up with them? For example, here in Broxburn, we should have been getting, I can only mention our own place, sorry, because I don't know about anybody else's, but we should have been getting new bathrooms. And of course, nothing like that could happen. I'm just wondering what Hanover's going to do about things like that in the future.
Okay. Well, we clearly want to try and catch up as quickly as we can with the backlog of planned maintenance programs, such as new bathrooms and kitchens and windows. But it is going to take some time to do that. I don't know whether Joe, our development asset management director, has any information to hand about your particular development. If she hasn't, we can certainly get back to you and let you know and give you an update. But Joe, have you got anything you can say at this point?
Well, Liz has just stolen my thunder for the Q&A session later. So I don't have any specific information on your development, but as Mike said, we'll get back to you. But maybe we had a whole series of questions that were submitted by people, and we've got a Q&A session later on in the agenda. So if I can maybe answer that one there, otherwise, is that okay?
I did put it in writing to you as well.
There you are. It's your question then. Just based on the agenda.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks for the question, Liz. It's a really important question. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Are there any others who wish to come in?
There's a question on the chat about the pack that was sent out to participants. Just to confirm that the pack that was sent out was for people who are members. There are some tenants and residents that are on today who won't have received that full pack. But all of the things that are in the pack will be on the website as well, so people can access it.
Okay, thanks for that, Wendy. And Graham Sturton, does you want to? Graham, do you have a question?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Perfect. We live right in the sticks. I'm in Inverbervie, so there's a whole row of flats with back doors. And getting back to the finance problem, as I realise things have been tight and things have been difficult, but we have a fence at the back, which is totally inadequate. And there is a lot of dog walkers. I've been attacked once by a dog. I've had dogs. I'm not able to leave my back door open because I've got dogs coming in. My cat got chased by a dog last week into the living room, and we've continually asked, we're not wanting a huge fence, just chicken wire to stop dogs getting in and fouling, and I feel we're just getting fobbed off. Now, I appreciate how difficult things have been. I've actually went to my local councillor to try and get someone moved on with this, because it's just a matter of time before somebody gets knocked down by a boisterous dog, or something else happens. It's just it's quite a worry.
Okay.
I thought I'd just put it forward.
Yeah. Okay. Now that sounds, on the face of it, that sounds a reasonable request to me, and we'll ask Angela and Joe to get the staff to come out and look into it, and hopefully we can deal with this, because we don't want to be putting our tenants in a dangerous and risky situation. And if there's a simple solution, even if it's an interim solution until we've got resources to do a Rolls-Royce job, but if we get an interim solution for you, then we should look to try and do that. So I'll make sure
I'm happy with that. I'm not looking for a Rolls-Royce. A mini moke would do fine.
That dates you a bit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Hi. I've got, before we come to Sylvia, I've got the question from Mary. She's managed to get her question in the chat here.
Well done,
so she said, during your speech, you keep you're referring to rented accommodation and not owner-occupied property. As we have management of sick and senior managers leaving, what is going to take place with this? So I think it's just some of the issues that we might have there.
Yeah, indeed, and I apologise for that. I do slip into dealing with referring to rental because that's the majority of our properties, but I should remember that we have shared equity and owner occupied. Yeah. We have all tenures, and we need to and do treat them all equally in terms of the quality of services we want to provide. Yeah, in terms of staffing arrangements, yeah, it has been a very challenging time with staff turnover, and you'll see in the press, I think even today there's been letters to the Prime Minister about the strains and stresses there are of getting staff in the care sector into organisations. And I think our English counterpart, Hanover, Anchor Hanover have been one of the co-signatories to the Prime Minister on this. But we will be looking to, if there are staff shortages, to replace those. It would be a priority for us to ensure we've got frontline staff positions covered for our residents' positions. So, I mean, all I can do is look to Angela to say, check out the situation in your particular development and see how we can address that concern.
It was.
Okay. Do we have any other? Wendy, you obviously got an overview.
It was just,
I think Sylvia.
No,
Sylvia?
It was just the sound isn't very good, and I couldn't hear the previous gentleman. Was he speaking about dogs?
Yeah, it was an issue to do with dogs and some nuisance that's causing in the development. So we're taking that away to have a look at that issue.
Right. I thought that's, first of all, I thought you were talking about floods, but it wasn't. It was dogs, right.
Right. There's been a couple of questions just about the volume, and we're dealing with that in the background. The comms team are dealing with that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so
we've got one more. We've got one more from Jane Robertson.
Yeah, I'm in the Dunfermline Hanover complex. I'm in to the comment. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. We could.
Yeah. Oh, you've just frozen.
Perfect. My question relates to finance.
Yeah, you're.
Yeah.
Ask the question in the year when our.
Oh, this is terrible.
Service.
You're freezing on us, so we can't. Try again.
Okay. I'll find the chat bubble if you wish.
If you turn your camera off, Jane, it usually uses less, so it might not freeze as much. It's worth a try. If I
turn which off, sorry?
Your camera. It just sometimes that can cause a disturbance. So if your camera is not on, it usually helps.
Yeah.
Certainly not all the time, but.
Okay.
Hello.
Camera.
Can you hear us? No.
Is that any better?
Yes. Can hear you. Yep.
Okay. In a year when services were all but missing for the best part of a year last year due to COVID, and still the rents and the service charge were increased. Email listening to that, but no one has got back to me, and it's a question that is raised often in our lounge. Yes. Now that we're able to have coffee mornings, lots of the residents are concerned about that. There was a time just recently when, because of lack of staff, we had no cleaner for a week. I would have thought that Hanover should have had certainly a pool of cleaners that they could rely on, particularly in this time of COVID, when cleanliness is being highlighted with every TV bulletin.
Okay, no, that's absolutely fair points and concerns. I think there are two bits there. Take the cleaning issue first, and yeah, you're right that we would want to have cleaning to a high standard particularly during this, or at all times, but particularly during this current period, and we would endeavour to have alternate backups with cleaning contractors for if our staff are sick or to have cover from other developments. So I'm not sure why we're unable to achieve that seamlessly in your situation, and that's something that we will need to look into to try and ensure that doesn't happen again. With regard to the rents and service charges, that's a more challenging situation for us, because while on the one hand we can see that if our services, for very good reasons, have not been as intense as they would normally be, it's reasonable for you to say, well, hang on, I'm paying for services I'm not getting. The difficulty for us as an organisation, and particularly as a charity, is that our costs have gone up, even though we've not been able to provide the services that we'd ordinarily want to. And I say that because I've mentioned before, the number of vacancies that we've got has gone up hugely. We would normally have 30 or 40 vacancies at any one time. We've now got over 160, and we had over 200 at its worst time. So that means that our income that is absolutely essential for the running of the organisation has dropped significantly. And therefore we're in that double bind position where we would ideally love to be able to say, yes, we'll give people rebates on their service charges, but because of the high level of vacancies we're carrying, that's not been possible. What we did manage to do last year was write off a lot of, because of the vacancies, the service charges were not sufficient to cover our costs. And so as an organisation, rather than putting a supplementary charge to residents, which would have been completely untenable for them, as an organisation, we wrote off large amount of the deficit around the service charges, so that it wouldn't be put forward as a burden for future years to residents. And we've used our reserves to do that. And there's a good chance that we'll need to do that again this year. But that's obviously eating into our ability to do other things, such as the repairs and the maintenance and so forth. So it's a really difficult place that we're at. And our best hope is that we can move as quickly as possible to filling the vacancies that we've now got, so we get back into a position where we have a more reliable income stream that does cover our costs. And we can also move back to a position where we're able to provide the full range of services again. So yeah, I absolutely understand your concerns, Jane, and I wish there was something I could do to say, yes, of course we can rectify that situation, but we're having to work through as best we can. And I think we have got a plan and a strategy for doing that. Our vacancies are coming down slowly, and hopefully that will accelerate as we go forward. But until we get the vacancies back down to the levels they were at historically, we're just not going to have the income flow that's going to allow us to do all the things that we want to do. So I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer.
There's one last question. Mary has also posted something in the chat just about we were assured that we would have quotes for painting and owners would have the opportunity to vote on the tender to choose, which never took place. I think that might be one for Joe.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'll pick that up.
Pick that up, Wendy.
We'll pick that up later on, and we'll get back to you, Mary, on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for those questions. Yes, that's put me on the spot, and it's good. That's exactly what should happen in these situations. And there's been a good range of questions raised there, and they're all very pertinent and very real. So hopefully I haven't shirked and avoided them too much, and I've given you as honest an answer as I can. But what I would now like to do is move on with the agenda to item 5, and that's the adoption of the annual report and the financial statements for the year. And I'd like to invite Gary Devlin, our Chair of Audit, to present this item, please. So, Gary, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Just to check. You can. Yeah, I'm seeing some nods.
You're a bit faint, and we can't see you, Gary.
Oh, you can't see me.
Oh, that's a bonus.
I can see you, Gary.
I can see you, Gary.
Well, some people
I
can.
can see you, Gary.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, that's lovely.
I'll just talk, and hopefully you can hear me if even if you can't see me. So I'm the chair of the audit committee, and the audit committee is the body within the organisation that scrutinises all of the finances of the organisation, all of its control arrangements, how it manages its performance, and how it manages its governance. So it's that control environment, and that's why I'm talking to the annual accounts. So the first thing in introducing the annual accounts that I think it's really important for everyone to understand is that Hanover is a not-for-profit charitable body. It doesn't make profit to give to shareholders. All of the profits that we make are to reinvest back in the properties that we have. It's for the benefit of our tenants that we run the whole of Hanover, and that's our goal and our aim, and that's a very different mindset and strategy. So if Hanover makes a surplus, which is one of the things I'll get on to talk about, one of the things we aim to do about that is to reinvest back in kitchens and bathrooms and fixing the roof and making sure that our homes are a nice place to live. And one of the things that you'll hear Mike and all of the board members talk about is how important that is to us as a board. And that's a key and crucial role that I have as chair of the audit committee. So what are the accounts telling you for this year? Hopefully you can still hear me. I'm just going to continue on. So the accounts are telling you that turnover was up by just under 43 million, and that's an increase of 2.4 million in the prior year. Now this is in the context of a COVID year, and the discussion we just had a second ago about the impact of COVID, it's meant that we're unable to do response repairs in the scale that we'd hoped to be able to do. We're unable to invest in our properties at the scale that we had hoped to do. Our people have often had to stay at home and work from home, and it's limited our ability to get around the estate to manage that estate effectively. When unfortunately people have died or left properties, that has meant that we are unable to re-let those properties quickly. And that means we can't gather the rents for those properties, which acts as a deflator on income. And at the same time, we've been able to take advantage of some government schemes to support organisations like Hanover, just to keep us going during a pandemic. And what that means in terms of overall surpluses is that we have added to our reserves this year. We've made an overall operating surplus of 5.9 million, and we have quite healthy reserves, but we also have quite healthy liabilities also, and those liabilities relate to the build-up of work that we've just been discussing that we need to get on and do. We need to get on with our investments in kitchens and bathrooms and windows, fixing roofs and fixing leaks, and making sure that our properties catch up with the gap that we've had from COVID. So I think our accounts show that Hanover is well managed from a financial perspective. We're very cautious and careful with the money that we receive. We worry about the things that you worry about. So we worry about what rent increases should mean. How do we pay our staff? And you lose your volume.
Oh, that's what it is, yeah.
So that rents remain affordable for our tenants, and also that we deliver a high quality of service to our tenants. That's why we're running Hanover in the way that we are. The accounts have received a true and fair view from our external auditors, Anderson Brown, who commented very positively on the quality of the financial stewardship that Hanover exercises. I don't intend to say anything more, but the accounts are a very long and complex document. I thought I would highlight those few issues for you, and of course I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Are there any questions to Gary around the financial position? It's just reassuring to know that we're in a stable position and we are able to accelerate the investments in our properties to try and catch up quickly with the works that have not been done over the last year or 18 months. Okay.
Question from Natalie Sinclair.
Right.
Hello,
Hello.
I am an owner-occupier living out in East Renfrewshire. I was just interested about the money that is acquired from owner-occupiers for the things like the factoring management fee, and how is that reinvested? Is it strictly put back into the factoring services that are provided and the, say, the quality of services that we get for things like window cleaning or grounds maintenance, or is that, if there's any profit made there, is that put into things like tenant repairs and whatnot, or is it strictly, you know, sort of held to the services that the management, you know, do you know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and this is an area that the audit committee have also raised with management. So I know that Donna Henderson, our director of finance, has been looking at this. But as a minimum, our aim is that for factoring services of the type that you describe, we should aim as a minimum to try to be cost neutral in that. So we should only be recharging owner occupiers like you the cost of the service. And in a sense, that sounds straightforward and easy to do, but actually it's very complicated because some of the costs are the overhead costs of running something like, you know, as large as Hanover. So the investment we make in our finance team, our IT team, our HR teams, and so on, these kind of corporate costs, and how we allocate those costs between tenants who pay rents and owner occupiers who are paying factoring fees. So there are some things to iron out there, but on the whole, I think we get that balance quite as close as we can. I think there's some scope for us to do better and potentially to ring fence that in the way that you've just described. But that is, we are working on that. But I would say for the accounts for this year, pretty much it's a cost neutral approach as far as we can make it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Okay. Well, thank you, Gary, and we'll therefore note and accept the financial statement for the records. And if we can now move on to the election of board members. Our rules say that every year, longest serving members, 3 members of the board, need to stand down, and they can then resubmit for continuous service on the board. And if there are sufficient places available, then that can happen without election. So this year, the 3 of us who are standing down are myself, Gary, Devlin and Kathy Wiley. Now, I've already indicated that I'm going to be retiring and not seeking reappointment to the board, but Gary and Kathy have both indicated their willingness to continue to serve on the board, which is a great thing. And therefore I would suggest and move that they be reappointed to the board. And that doesn't require an election. I think that can be an automatic process because there are sufficient places available on the board. So with everyone's approval, I will reappoint Gary and Kathy to the board. We've also had, as I mentioned in my report, recruitment of 4 new board members during the year, and our rules stipulate that new board members appointed out with the AGM process have to be co-optees until the next AGM. So the 4 joined us last November, and we now want to appoint them as full board members. And again, there are sufficient places available on the board to accommodate them without there needing to be any competitive elections. So I would like to seek a proposer and a seconder to nominate Ashley Campbell, Adele Irwin, Robert Rowe and Alan Stewart as full board members. So it would be great if somebody would be prepared to nominate and someone second that proposal.
Sylvia, thank you. And wait to see who that Liz.
Yes,
right,
okay.
That's fine.
Excellent.
Okay.
So we have a proposer and a seconder, and therefore I would, in the absence of anybody objecting, I will now declare that they are full board members and welcome them formally to the board and thank them for their contributions thus far and look forward to their continuing engagement. So thank you all. Okay, so we can now move swiftly on to item 7, which is the Chief Executive's report. So Angela, over to you.
Thank you, Mike, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm now conscious that I'm one of 2 people who are standing between you and our residents' conference this afternoon. So I'm not going to say too much as we've run over time a little bit, but I did want to say hello, and it's great to see so many people here today. And you've heard from Mike already today really about the looking back over the past year and the challenge we've had around COVID. And I really wanted maybe just to turn our attention to where we go next as an organisation. And this is the final year of our strategy, our current strategy as an organisation. And we've spent quite a bit of time already this year with our board looking at lessons from the past, but where do we go next? And what does Hanover look like in the next 5 to 10 years? So we're really starting to get excited and enthusiastic about where we go next, because while COVID has certainly been challenging, it has also brought a whole load of opportunities to our door. So being able to have a virtual event like this today is absolutely fantastic. And actually this is very reminiscent of how we're running our business now in terms of the virtual world helping us to do that effectively. So we're really focused on what comes next, and in particular, how do we keep moving our frontline services forward to make them as user-friendly, as modern and as accessible as possible. So we're looking forward to a big piece of consultation that we'll do later this year with all of our customers and all of our staff on where we go next. And we'll combine that with the ambition and the ideas that our board and our senior teams are bringing together as well. So it's actually quite an exciting time and quite an opportunistic time, and we can't forget that, but we also can't ignore how challenging it has been over this piece. And I'm hoping this afternoon in our residents' conference we can really reflect on some of the sadness that there has been around, but stay focused on where we go next and have a bit of fun, and that's really important to remember to do that, isn't it? So before I hand back to Mike, there is just a couple of things I really do want to say, and one is, as Mike has already said, this is his last gig as chair, and he has been on the board of Hanover for 17 years, which is just amazing, and he has left such a legacy for this organisation. Will be forever in his debt, and 6 years as chair is a tough ask for anyone on a voluntary basis, so we're grateful for the dedication and the commitment he's shown in that time. So I'm sure you'll all join me in thanking Mike for his many years of service, but we are looking forward, and our 4 new members have already made a significant contribution to our board, and we're also looking forward to Gary Devlin, who you've just heard from, becoming our chair. So it's quite a lot of change in the organisation, but it's bringing fresh ideas and fresh motivation and fresh energy. So we are really looking forward to the next few years. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Well, thanks for those remarks, Angela. Thanks very much. Okay, let's swiftly move on so we can get to the fun bit. The penultimate item is appointment of external auditors, and we'd look to continue with the appointment of Anderson Brown. They were appointed during this last year. This is in their first year in situ, and they've done a very good job. So it would be good to get a proposer and a seconder so that we can reappoint Anderson Brown. If anybody can stick their hand up so Wendy can see, that would be great.
Gary Devlin as
Gary
proposer. Yep. And Liz.
Seconder. Thank you very much.
Thank
Liz.
you.
So they are duly appointed as our auditors for the forthcoming financial year. And that then takes us to any other business. And if there is no any other business, we can say thank you very much for attending this annual general meeting and for your questions, which have been challenging but pertinent. So thank you for that. And we'll now conclude this. I think that if you stay where you are, then we'll move quickly into the tenants event, or the residents event, I should say. That's already a little bit late in starting. as a board, we have to reconvene just for a short while to do some formalities around the appointment of Gary and others to official positions on the board. So we will rejoin you very shortly in your event. So until then, thank you very much for joining, and stay with the event, and we'll be with you again soon. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to what is going to be a unique residence event for 2021. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Milburn, Director of Customer Services, and I'll be overseeing proceedings today. You may remember the tenants' conferences or national owners panel events we held in 2018 and 19. We'll return to face-to-face events as soon as possible. However, for now, we hope our residence event proves to be a great way to touch base with you all. Also, I do hope you all received your refreshments for the event. We've had to take great care when organising today's proceedings to ensure COVID safety, given the ongoing pandemic. Sadly, COVID continues to have an impact, and the residents who had been planning to attend from our development at Harley Court in Falkirk are not now able to come along today to use the lounge due to cases there. Fortunately, no one is seriously unwell, and we certainly wish all concerned a speedy recovery. Just to do a bit of housekeeping, I mean, Mike did some earlier for the AGM, but I'll just repeat that because some more people have joined today's event now. Just to ask that you keep your microphones on mute if you can at all times. If you do have a question, can you please use the chat function? You access the chat function through a speech bubble that will either be at the top of your screen or the bottom, and you can go in there and type in questions. What we will do, we will answer them as quickly as we can, but there may be a short delay before we answer them, so just please bear with us. Also, we're recording the meeting today, so if you don't want to be recorded, just please turn your camera off. Also, an electronic recording of today's event will be available soon, and we can let you know when that, how to get access to that, so that you maybe your fellow residents who haven't been able to attend today will be able to watch it on the screen over the coming weeks. And as Mike said earlier, if you do encounter any serious problems and need urgent assistance, you can call us on 0131 557 7437. So just to repeat that, 0131 557 7437. So to start proceedings, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Angela Curry, Hanover's Chief Executive Officer.
Chris, that's not working.
Oh, right. Apologies for that. I think what we'll do, because I understand that Angela's been detained, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And what we've been working on, our communications team have been working on, is developing a film that acknowledges the impact COVID has had on us all over the last 18 months. This film comprises of wonderful contributions we've received from across Hanover and records how residents and staff responded in such a positive way to the most challenging of times. So I'm really pleased to now welcome you to the premiere of our film, A Year in View. The film
Thank you, Presiding Officer. On Sunday, we had the first positive case of novel coronavirus COVID-19 confirmed in Scotland.
Everyone, can you hear me and possibly even see me? Welcome to Hanover's 40th annual general meeting. I'm Mike Martin, and you are scattered about Scotland, and it's wonderful to see you. This is genuinely a first for Hanover, having our annual general meeting in this live streamed and dispersed way.
I'm going to show you how to do the PCR test. Now I'm ready to swab. Both nostrils have to do.
My reflections on the past year only really start from January when I joined Hanover as Chief Executive. It's hard to explain what it feels like to join an organisation in the middle of a pandemic and from home. To say it has been strange would be an understatement, but one thing I do know for sure, that I've met the most dedicated and hard-working people, and it makes me proud to be a part of Hanover. The pandemic is far from over and may still present us with quite a few challenges, but I'm really excited about the next few years and what our ambitious new strategy will bring.
18 months into COVID. Who thought that right at the start? No one, I'm sure. So from a finance perspective, it's been a challenge. We were a team who weren't prepared, we weren't quite ready. But we settled very quickly, and we've looked at improvements, and we've taken opportunities where we can to change things for the better for the customer. In terms of Hanover's finances, it certainly has been a challenge. We've lost income streams that we may not get back. We have high voids, and that's had to be managed really closely. Our costs have to be monitored with more care than ever because our margins are a lot tighter. And COVID is not just for 18 months. The impact of COVID in terms of Hanover's finances is going to be felt for a long time to come. But we're in a good place. And certainly we can rise to the challenge and the challenges that COVID are going to present in the future.
Since the beginning of lockdown, as part of our Step Up initiative, I have been involved with the Hanover Phone Buddies, firstly by coordinating over 400 residents who were to get a call. Initially, I had over 40 residents to call weekly, and to begin with, I was able to make sure that our residents had the basics such as food and any medicines that they may need.
Jump to the left.
Last year was an especially challenging time for everyone. In terms of reactor repairs, as many people will know, we had to halt all works except emergencies. This meant a significant number of jobs were placed on hold, and we were also conscious that many of our tenants didn't want to report repairs and held on to them until works were able to start again. Our tenants' patience and understanding was really appreciated throughout the period, and once restrictions were lifted, as it took us a bit of time to catch up.
The beginning of the pandemic, myself and Alison McKenzie, we trained together. We trained as many staff as we could on Microsoft Teams on how it works, and to allow people to remotely attend meetings, to stay in contact with their colleagues, and just so that they weren't feeling so isolated. It was just a medium to be able to do that.
Throughout the last year, we've been on site providing residents with meals and meeting care needs, as well as being there in an emergency. It's been challenging, but colleagues at Hanover have stepped up and taken on that challenge. We have seen sad times at the development where residents have passed away, but we've also seen fun times assisting residents to keep in touch with their families using new technology. Loved ones have seen ceilings and floors and maybe a few things that they shouldn't have, but colleagues have always stepped up to the challenge and will continue to do so. The Hanover workforce always goes above and beyond.
I think that's us back, Chris.
Yeah, welcome back, everyone. Look, I hope you really enjoyed that wonderful and moving record of Hanover's COVID year. As you all know, it's been a really challenging period. One actually that we've all been affected by. I think that's been the unique thing about this pandemic, hasn't it? It's affected each and every one of us in one way or another. So to continue, when you sent in your application to attend today, you were asked to submit questions for the next part of our event. We had a great response. So good, in fact, that unfortunately we won't have time to answer all the questions you've asked today. However, what we will be doing is responding to all the questions received directly to you. So if you did submit a question, we'll be in touch with you, okay? What we're going to do now, though, is answer a representative selection of the questions you asked and give you an opportunity also to meet our executive leadership team. To guide us through this, I'm pleased to welcome Janice MacDonald, our Head of Enhanced Housing, many of whom you will know already. And Janice is going to act as our interrogator. So welcome, Janice, and over to you.
Welcome, thanks very much, Chris, and hello everybody. It's great to see so many people joining this virtual event today. As Chris has alluded, we've had lots and lots of great questions that have been put forward from tenants all across Scotland. It would have been great to be able to have the opportunity to pose all of those questions today, but we just have too many. So what we thought we'd do is we have looked at some questions and some general themes, and I thought, ladies and gents, we would have some fun. And we'll take this opportunity to interrogate our executive leadership team, but also to learn a wee bit about them, a wee bit about their background, and perhaps an insight to them as colleagues. So I'm sure we'll hopefully learn some interesting facts. In no particular order, I have a list of questions, and I suggest that we ask Joanna Vassie, our Director of Asset Management. So hello, Jo. I am keen to learn a bit about you, and I'm sure the audience is as well. Would you mind taking a few minutes just to tell us a wee bit about your role within Hanover, a bit about your background, and also, I don't want to call it your guilty pleasure, but perhaps an interesting fact or a personal achievement that you could perhaps share with us today?
Okay, well, firstly, I was never told this was an interrogation. I think the way this was sold to me was that you would be like Michael Parkinson or Michael Aspel and, you know, ask the questions. But okay, so I've been at Hanover for about, I think it's 7 months now, and it's flown past. And my remit here is all the asset stuff. It's all about stock. So I look after the reactive repairs functions, the planned maintenance programme, the new build development and any remodelling, as well as factoring. And obviously, as part of all of that, we work really closely with the other teams. And my background is I'm from a development background, so a new build and project management background. That's what I started my career in. So it's all about managing projects from inception to completion. So you can see how that fits with my current role. And I haven't gone for a guilty secret because I don't know you all that well yet. But I was going to tell you something that not a lot of people know. It's a bit random. But I have a certificate in dry stain diking. So I can build dry stain walls. And I did that as part of volunteer work I used to do on a regular basis for the National Trust for Scotland. Now, you may think that's incredibly useful and you know of some walls that you want me to do. I would say it's not a certificate in speed dry stain diking, so I probably have to admit it took me about a week to do 1 metre. So yeah, not easy. I'm not going to solve all the walls in Scotland very quickly, am I?
Well, I mean, I didn't see that one coming, Joe. But what we have got, a question that's been posed by a number of tenants, and indeed it was perhaps raised earlier, is we are mindful as a result of COVID that some of the big projects, especially in your planned maintenance programme, have had to be paused. How will Hanover get this programme back on track and delivered for tenants?
Yes, Liz tried to steal my thunder earlier, didn't she?
She did indeed.
I think this is really difficult, and I'm really conscious of always referring back to COVID because some part of me wants to consider that to be done and dusted, but it is still very much a reality that's having a significant impact. So as I think Mike said, you know, we're still dealing with quite a bit of overhang of that in terms of the reactive repairs, and that's been a feature of this year. We had planned the budget for this year on the basis that we expected COVID to continue. That was the pragmatic way that we could look at the budget this year, and that included how we were going to do all the planned programme. So we worked on the basis that we weren't going to cross the threshold if we could avoid it. And that was the option, we call it option A in our budget, that was submitted and has been approved. And we've been sticking to that. What we've also had is some other challenges that we had to meet. So maybe some of you will have seen the press around smoke detection and changes in the fire regulations. And that's a piece of work that we're obliged to complete by the end of February. So we obviously put that on hold for the greater part of last year, and now we have restarted that work and we're really focusing on getting that done as that pertains to tenant safety. And I would just urge you all, whilst I've got a captive audience, to give access where you possibly can to get that work done. In terms of getting back on track with the planned programme, we're currently working up next year's budget and looking forward. So we don't just look at next year, we look at the next 5 and 30 years. And we're trying to look pragmatically at all those works that haven't been done and how we can slot those in given the funding availability. And you've heard the chat around how we need to be very careful about how we manage our finances going forward. What we're also going to try and do is communicate much better with you so that you have some degree of knowledge around what is going to come up for your developments in the next few years. So we've been working on a template on that, and we're trying to move to a position where you have more surety about what's going to happen. Obviously, we have to deal with things as they come out or they arise, but we're going to try and give you a better sense of, well, what has been done and what's in the future programme for you. So we're working on that at the moment, and we're looking to launch that in April. We are obviously going to have to prioritise essential works, you know, things where roof works have to be done and projects which are about wind and watertight. And I realise that will be quite frustrating. But you have my assurance that the team and I across Hanover are very much trying to get that planned programme back up to speed as soon as possible.
Thanks, Joe. I mean, I do recognise that's a complex piece of work, and trying to squash things in to, you know, in a time frame can be a challenge. But I'm hopeful that certainly answered Liz's question of earlier, and I'm sure it's a question that lots of people had for today. So thanks for that. If I can move on to director number 2 for the hot chair, and if I can maybe speak with Donna Henderson, our director of strategic finance. Hello, Donna. Now you're on mute,
Hello,
so you can't
Jana.
escape. Thank you, Donna. So again, we have got a good question lined up for you, but I think again, just as similar to Joe, it would be good if you could just explain a bit of your background, and perhaps even share with us something that you've been particularly proud of in your past. It would be great to hear.
Okay, so I'm the director.
Sorry, just to say we can't see Donna.
Okay.
Now, I'm sure Ben will be trying quite patiently to get you on the full screen right now, Donna.
I can see Donna.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not. It's maybe a good thing you can't see me.
So, Donna, a bit
Right.
about your background, a bit about your role, and again, give us a bit of excitement with your guilty pleasure, if you don't
Right,
mind.
I'll try my very best. Thanks, Jana. So, I'm the Director of Finance at Hanover, and I've been here in this post for just over 18 months. So, I started right at 2 weeks before lockdown. Was my first day at Hanover. So I was in the office for 2 weeks, and then I've been at home pretty much ever since. My background, well, Hanover's the third housing association I've worked for, covering a career that spanned 20 plus or more, not that I want to divulge how many exactly years. And basically what I do is I head up the finance team, the ICT team and the procurement team at Hanover. My role primarily is to oversee the financial operations. Let me think of a thing. So my claim to fame, if you like, dates back to 2014, and I attended a concert at the Hydro in Glasgow, and during that concert I was asked to go on stage, and I danced on stage for 3 songs with the sadly now departed pop star Prince.
My goodness, Donna. So it's fair to say that you're a fan of the 80s then, quite clearly?
I'm absolutely a big fan of the 80s.
Okay, so thanks for that. On to a serious question then, Donna. Another follow-on again, sadly from COVID, and again a question that was posed earlier, has meant that some tenants are asking if we are able to offer any reduction in their charges as a result of the last 18 months.
Okay. So I think Mike touched on this a wee bit earlier, but I'll give you a wee bit more information. And as Joe said, we're in the kind of budget phase right now, and next year is going to be a huge challenge for us, a financial challenge at Hanover. We've got increased inflation costs, repairs costs, material costs, and an increase in national insurance coming our way. But what we're also fully sighted on is the challenges that you as our residents are also facing. So we understand that there's a suspension to triple lock guarantee that will impact on use, and obviously the national insurance increase as well. And any increases that may come on rents and service charges we'll need to look at the affordability there. Most of our costs, unfortunately, in relation to any kind of reduction are fixed. And we've had lots of cost pressures because of COVID. So although we were unable to reduce service charges last year, as Mike had said, the board did approve a fairly substantial write-off. Now that write-off was just short of £500,000. And that's £500,000 of cost that would have otherwise been passed on to you, the residents. The effect of this was to prevent bigger increases in this financial year, and roughly equates to about £104 a property. So although that kind of went under the radar, that's something that we were able to do. And although it wasn't cash in your hand or a refund, we did what we could to prevent a bigger increase this year. We're working really hard as an ELT, as an organisation, and with all our budget managers to try and make sure we keep our costs down as much as possible, despite the challenges that we've talked about. And we've got plans for effectively managing the impact of COVID and Brexit so that we can refocus on your homes and getting that planned and capital works back. So those kitchens and bathrooms that, you know, Liz and mentioned earlier on, we want to get that back on track. We've now got a big catch-up exercise to do to expedite that and do it as quickly as possible. In the next couple of weeks, what we'll be looking to do is consult on next year's rent consultation process and some changes to realign costs between our rents and service charge. And what we're asking you today would be that as many of you as possible respond to that consultation. We need to understand what matters to you so that the board are fully sighted when they make any of those kind of decisions. Thanks, Janice.
I think that's a really important point, Donna, to use this as a good forum to remind all tenants, let's not miss that opportunity. So when you get the voting slips through the door, I know that housing officers, staff on site encourage tenants to complete, but I think that's, Donna, really reaching out to everyone. So if we could just all try and remember that, I think that would be great. Thank you, Donna. Now, Chris Milburn. Chris has obviously acted as the host of today, but it's good to have him in the chair, and it's our turn to ask him the questions. Chris, I know you introduced yourself earlier, but there has been some folk that have joined the event. Perhaps, again, if you wouldn't mind giving a bit of background. I know many folk know you, but if you give a bit of background about yourself, and again, perhaps a personal insight would be nice.
Yes, thanks, Janice. Hello again, everyone. You'll be getting bored of me now. So yeah, I'm Chris Milburn, Director of Customer Services. I've actually worked at Hanover an awful long time, since the last millennium, actually. I joined in '99, so I've worked over 20 years at Hanover in a number of different roles, but for the last 12 years or so, I've been in different directors' positions, and I'm now Director of Customer Services, which involves all the housing, the rented housing, all the telecare services and the care services that Hanover provides. Also, the department includes things like the customer engagement service that Elaine McCaffrey heads up, and also the volunteering service. You may have benefited from the services of one of our volunteers, and also business development. So there's a range of. It's a big department. There's a lot of people work in it, and it covers obviously a lot of different places across Hanover where a lot of you live. So that's my role at the moment. My sort of secret talent, if you like, I'd call it that, is that I play guitar. And in fact, in the 80s, I was in a couple of bands, and I was just thinking, listening to Donna there, that maybe we should reform the band and play a few Prince numbers, and she might want to jump up on stage when we're doing that and have a little dance. I'm not sure, but we can we'll talk about that maybe after the event. But
email, was it? It's an email. All right.
I think that's definitely you reaching out your calling card to our comms team for next year's event, Chris. Perhaps we will see an ELT band forming, which would be really fun for everyone.
Yeah. I mean,
well, Janice, there's a video of me actually dancing on stage with Prince, so if we're struggling for some entertainment next year, I'm happy to share that video of me on stage at the Hydro. I'm more than happy. I don't mind at all sharing.
And this is when I'm glad the event's recorded, ladies and gents, so we have it on tape that Donna's given that commitment. Chris, we spoke a bit about COVID and the impact certainly for Joe's planned maintenance programme, and Donna speaking about the finances. But on a more positive note, now that the restrictions have eased, COVID's not gone away, but we are now in a position where we've been able to open up our common areas. And I know that's an area that's now been enjoyed by many tenants, but it has prompted some questions about the common areas, and we've had a number of questions now coming in from tenants asking how can we help support them to set up social committees, and I think that's really important for tenants to engage with each other.
Yeah, well, it's essential, really. I think that returns now, because one of the really regrettable things about COVID has been that it stopped us socialising, and that's such an important part of our lives, isn't it? To meet up and connect with people. But you're right, Janice, that things are slowly coming back to normal. I mean, we've still got cases, unfortunately, but with the vaccinations and the other safeguards we've got in place now, we are able to meet together more regularly and more often. I mean, a great way to structure social events is through the creation of a social committee at your development. So if you and fellow residents are interested in doing that, the best place to start is to discuss it with either your development manager or housing officer. And what they can do is put you in touch with our customer engagement team, which I mentioned earlier, headed up, as I say, by Elaine McCaffrey, who's our customer experience manager. I mean, there's also a range of other ways of participating with Hanover, and the team, when you contact them, can explain what the other options are. There's a range of things you can do to get involved with Hanover to inform the work we do.
Yep.
And finally, one point I would like to make is that we're looking to to re-establish our focus group meetings. These will be face-to-face, and we used to run them annually around Scotland, or not annually, sorry, every 6 months we used to run them.
Yeah.
I'd really encourage you to have a look to attend those events. And I've, personally, I've really missed them. I've really missed getting to developments to meet residents and talk through the issues, because they provide a great opportunity for you to meet staff face to face, discuss some of the important topics we've got, including those that Donna and Joe have been talking about this afternoon, such as the cost pressures and the knock-on effect of those. But it's also a great opportunity just to have a blether, isn't it, with other folk that you won't probably have seen for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We do have a great menu of options where we can help tenants be engaged, and I'm sure that Elaine and our team and the housing officers can support people with that. On the focus groups, they are great forums. Many of the people who are attending here today, I know, have been regular focus group attendees, so hopefully we can get that back up and running and have staff move around the country and get back to some real hot topics, they're usually well attended as well. So thanks for that, Chris.
Okay.
I'm moving on now to Wendy Russell. Wendy's our latest member of ELT, and Wendy's role is Head of Governance and Transformation. Now, Wendy, I know you've been busy on the chat function already today, but it's your turn to sit in the seat and keep your fingers off the keyboard. So again, would you mind sharing with the audience a bit of background about yourself, a bit about your role, and again, if you want, or if you would be kind enough to share any personal highlight as well, would be really interesting.
Okay, thanks, Janice. So yeah, my background, I worked in another housing association for 12 years as company secretary and head of business services, and then I'm coming on to do a similar role, although transformation does sound like a really grand title. I used to for my sins, I used to manufacture cardboard boxes before that, so that's a whole other story. So my job is to make sure that we've got all of the right processes in place and all of the right support for our board to make the right decisions, to make sure that we can deliver the best service and quality for our customers. So, and that's making sure that we keep the Scottish Housing Regulator happy, the Care Inspectorate, all of the people who are wanting to make sure that we're following the rules and doing the right thing. So stopping us from going to jail really is what my job is. In terms of my misspent youth, I was an under-18 pool champion for South Lanarkshire. I used to go around pool halls and play pool. That's why I think my husband fell in love with me. So there you go.
I like these surprises that we find out about people. So clearly Wendy's a bit of a hustler, and if there's ever a Hanover competition, I'm coming into your team. On a serious question now then, Wendy, we've heard from your fellow ELT members, and I think communication is really important, especially a fallout of COVID and how we're all spread across the country. So you've been new to the post. How best do you feel that we can improve how we communicate with our tenants to ensure that everyone is kept fully informed and up to date really in Hanover's business?
Okay. So yeah, I've only been here for 5 weeks, but already learning so much about this great organisation. What I have learned, and even today we saw it, is that if we don't get communication quite right, it's really annoying for people. It's quite frustrating when we don't tell people things. People just want to know when they're getting their kitchen, their bathroom, or other things that we need to do. And Joe obviously highlighted some of that earlier. So we've been doing a lot of communicating through COVID. So we've obviously got Grapevine, which is a regular bulletin, but we have been producing another bulletin that's been coming out once every couple of months, just to keep people informed of the ever-changing guidance from Scottish Government, but also about how we're addressing things to make sure everybody's safe and well as best we can manage as a housing association. We want to continue to do that with communication. We need to think about how we best use our social media. We've got the Hanover Blether on Facebook, and we can use that as a way to do it. But some of the things that we've been talking about as a management team is how we improve our communication in the different areas. So working with Jo and her team to have a communications plan to send out to our owner occupiers, to send out about our planned maintenance. Because if we tell people, then we can manage expectations of what to expect. And we're doing the same for our staff. So over the next year, we'll be looking at a whole communication strategy for what we say internally and externally to you as customers. And so keep telling us what you want to hear. That is always an important thing. So keep telling us. There's lots of different ways you can tell us what your opinion is of what you want to hear, and we'll make sure that we try and incorporate that into what we're doing.
Oh, thanks, Wendy. I think that's a really positive message to put out to everyone, and I'm sure we'll all work and hopefully build on improving how we communicate moving forward. I'm hoping Angela's here. Last but not least, our chief exec's in the hot seat. Has Angela rejoined the meeting?
I'm here.
We just need you in the spotlight, Angela. There you are. So Angela, hopefully you have found some of the questions that have been raised by tenants and pitched to your ELT team today and their responses interesting. But I think we've got a really good question for you. But before we go to your question, perhaps again, if you could give us a bit of background, and again, I don't know if I like this word guilty secret or guilty pleasure, but certainly a bit of an insight to you personally would be great.
Thank you, Janice. And I am sitting here enjoying what is clearly a missed calling for you in life as an interviewer. You are very polished, Janice, so well done. So great to see you all again this afternoon. And as you know, my job is chief exec, and it's to keep this rabble in check quite a lot of the time, Janice. You can see they are some bunch, but obviously my job is much about where we go next as an organisation, and that's a huge part of my job. And it feels a little bit actually difficult to do sometimes when you're in the middle of such an unusual period of time. But of course, we've really got to do that. So that's been a big part of my first 9 months or so in this job, and we'll continue to do that forward thinking. And I've worked in social housing, local authority, third sector and housing associations just over 30 years, Janice. So I know the sector very well in Scotland, and have known about Hanover all of my working life. So to actually be working here is a great privilege and pleasure. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the next few years brings.
Oh, thanks, Angela. It's really it's an exciting journey for Hanover. As Mike mentioned earlier, you're the third chief exec only in such a large organisation, so I'm sure that comes with fun, but indeed pressure and challenges moving forward.
And Janice, see, just to be clear, I'm a bit of I've got a competitive spirit, just like Wendy. So I'm also do love activities, and so if there are any games to be played, you might want to be in my team as well.
I'm going to keep my options open today, Angela, to see everyone's personal skills before I make that decision. So, Angela, any other personal insights? Is there something that you've been particularly proud of that you've achieved? You've achieved lots in your working life, but what about in your personal life? We've already heard that your Director of Finance is hot off the press with Prince, and you've got a bit of a hustler in the governance team. Chris can do a bit of a tune, and we know that Jo can build you a wall. But tell me, what can you do? Or what have you done?
Well, Janice, as I've alluded to, I do like a bit of a challenge, and particularly activity-based challenges. I do a fair bit of sport in my spare time. But one of the things I've done in my past that sticks with me the most is a parachute jump. And I was in my early 20s, and I did that in Northumberland. And it is one of the things that I can still remember, although it was 30 years ago, with absolute clarity, because it was such a special thing to do. It was that mixture of absolute terror an absolute joy, and I absolutely loved it, and I wanted to take it up as a hobby, but it's one of the worst hobbies you can have, because to do a static line jump you have to have virtually no wind, and you know, in Scotland, when does that ever happen? So I tried it for about 6 months and only managed a couple of jumps, so I gave up on that as a hobby. But it was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, that's one thing I'll always be proud of.
Well done you, that's a brave lady to do that. I just want to say thanks to ELT for allowing us to pose the questions today. Some of you may have loved it, some of you may have loathed it, but I've enjoyed it, and I think hopefully people sitting around Scotland will have enjoyed hearing a bit about our business and what you've had to say for the department and the future, but also a bit about yourself, because after all, we're all human beings working together as a team. All those people Chris mentioned earlier, we will get back to everyone who has put a question, and everyone will have an individual response, so please be reassured about that. And thanks to the tenants who did put the questions forward, much appreciated. And with that, I'll pass you back to the host with the most, and that's Chris. Thank you.
Well, sadly, that brings the resident event for today to a close, or for this year to a close. I really hope you had a good time in what has been a unique event for us. It's the first time we've tried this on this sort of scale. So we'd really like to hear from you about how you found it. You know, what worked, what didn't work. Because it may well be that we run some events like this in the future. We do want to get back to face-to-face. But there's obviously some benefits from doing it this way. You know, we all save on a lot of travel, and also whilst the pandemic continues, it's a safe way of doing things. So let us know what you think. How did you find it? Just communicate with us through your development manager, your housing officer, or just emailing in via the website. So any way you can, please get in touch. We'd be really interested to hear how you found it. So on behalf of all at Hanover, and Angela and the executive leadership team and the board and Mike Martin, I'd really like to thank you again for attending today. I hope you had a great time, and I look forward to seeing you all, hopefully at your developments in the very near future. Okay, thank you again for coming, and safe journeys home.